have three key messages. And the first is Kenya has navigated turbulent waters in 2011. But at the same time, it's a resilient economy, and we see robust growth about 4.3%. The second message is that Kenya's economy has grown increasingly out of balance. For the first time in several decades, the current account deficit has reached 10%. This is much larger than Greece. Our third message is that Kenya is going through a momentous devaluation. It's ambitious, it's great, it promises a lot, and it's going to be very challenging to deliver this promise. We'll start here with our view of the state of the economy today. And that picture is really showing an iceberg. What we can see is the tip of the iceberg, but below is a much larger mass. And you remember the story of the Titanic. This is exactly what happened. It unmasks the underlying structural weaknesses of the Kenyan economy, which is the current account deficit and how our external sector is performing. So, and looking at growth in 2011, we argue that Kenya's economy is still robust. The World Bank estimates growth at about 4.3% this year. The blue there is agriculture, left is industry and services. You can see that services are still very strong, but also it's a trend that agriculture has actually turned a really positive growth. If you think about 2009, where we had a significant contraction in agriculture. But we do know that 2011 hasn't been easy, and we have seen core inflation rise over time. The line you have there is core inflation, which is basically what the central bank focuses on. And you can see this has been a gradual pickup up to November this year. We tried to simulate what the policy actions that we've seen in the recent days, starting from February 2010. So the blue line here is the policy led by the central bank. But I think beside those policy actions, and as we wait for the markets to react, we must now begin to change the debate and ask, if food and fuel is what's driving this high inflation and the fundamentals, how do we begin to address them? And here what we have are we have the food story in this side of the graph, and the red line is the global maize prices. The blue one is Kenya's domestic maize prices. And you can see that every time we have a crisis, the prices in Kenya's market almost triple. This year you can see that the global price of maize is about $275 per kg. But in Kenya it's still 26. And we must begin to ask, for how long will poor Kenyans begin to pay these punitive prices? The other challenge is that Kenya's economy has become increasingly unbalanced. The line here is the current account deficit. This is imports minus exports. And you can see what's been happening since 2007. It's grown over time. It is the unseen iceberg, and really it doesn't make it to the debate in the policy arena. But the key challenge here is that if you remove the short-term flows from our external account, our overall balance of payments would actually be negative. This year, this is the dotted line. We try to simulate. Supposing you remove the short-term flows, which you call the food truth capital, what would our external position look like? And this is the dotted line. You can see that from January, if you remove the short-term flows, you actually have a negative position in our overall balance of payments. We did this simulation using data from the central bank, and we observed that today, if you add the top four exports, tea, tourism, horticulture, and manufacturing, they are not sufficient to pay for our oil imports. Before that, they could. The blue line is our oil imports, and the red line is our exports from these four commodities. And you can see what's happening here. Since May of this year, the revenues, the foreign exchange earnings from these four commodities were not sufficient to pay for oil, and you can see the gap has widened. But when all is said and done, it's not all doom and gloom. Like we argue, this economy is very resilient, and we can see that in 2012, we can actually achieve a growth rate of 5%, growing to 5.5% or more in 2013, depending on how the transition is managed, how the ambitious devolution is managed. But we also argue that in a case where you don't have this smooth transition in 2012, and where actually the looming crisis in the euro area actually plays out, you could actually see the economy contract to 3.1%. In our analysis, every year we have an election, we have seen that some of the lowest growth episodes in this country have been observed in election years. You can see what happened in 1984, what happened in 1992, what happened in 96 and 2002, and we can argue that 2007 was a unique year, but we can see that the crash actually happened in the year after. So a lot will depend on how we manage this transition. And I'm going to switch gear and talk about Kenya's momentous and ambitious devolution. We think it's really big. It's the first time robberies happen this way. You're going to see 8 provincial administrations expanded into 47 new counties, but you're also going to see a bit of concentration. You're going to see 175 local authorities collapsed into 47. And again, you're also going to see 280 districts plus also collapsed into 47 new institutions that are going to be setting up at the same time. We did a quick analysis of the budget, and you can see that if you sort of net out those functions that will not be devolved, if you think about debt service payments and pensions, think about police, think about defense that wouldn't be decentralized, and maybe even education, then perhaps only 54% is left between the center and the counties. This is sort of what the point we're making in this graph, and you can see some counties would get a very big share of the youth population, and some others would actually get very little. So for the Commission of Revenue Allocation, it's going to be a very complicated balance to actually make sure that when you create winners and losers, it's transparent, it's clear, and it can be interrogated by the public. But there's a golden rule that you make sure that your finances follow function. So that in the transition, you don't have a situation where you're compromising service delivery. It's a simple rule. It can be made very transparent and clear so that the public can interrogate it and make sure if you're developing a health function, then the finances must follow the functions that you're developing. And as that happens, we argue that it has to be designed into a single system where you take into account the county-owned revenues, you take into account the equalization fund, you take into account the 15%, and if by any chance you have to go beyond the 15%, there are options. You could subject the additional into the same simple formula, but you also have an option of thinking about conditional grants. This map is showing that actually most of Kenya's counties are rural. The red bar, it shows the share of the population that is rural, and the blue, the share of the population that is urban. And this is a simple example, and you can see that most county revenues will be generated in the urban areas. In this graph, we have urban population on the x-axis and local authority revenues per capita. And you can see where Nairobi and Mombasa are, and where West Pokot is, where you know it's really a rural county. So any county that has a significant share of urban population will basically have a higher revenue generating capacity. But that said, the national government must have a transparent system that the citizens can also interrogate. And it's both ways, from the national government to the citizens. But perhaps more important, as we set up the new structures, it's going to be fundamental that there's a system of feedback from the citizens to their county governments, and from the county governments to the citizens. And again, also between the national government and the county governments. So it is important that you have a strong center that can manage this process. And if the center cannot hold, things are likely to fall apart. So thank you very much. This is our presentation for today.